After 20 years of marriage, Hannah and I had always been sure that our love was unbreakable. But then, one unexpected event shook that conviction, and I couldn't help but wonder if it really was just a coincidence. It opened my eyes to things I hadn't noticed before. Over the years, I made a point of celebrating our anniversary in grand yet simple ways. Little adventures here and there, always with a bouquet of her favorite flowers. I wasn't wealthy, but I never hesitated to spend what I could to make Hannah smile. Still, she'd often scold me for overspending, insisting that material things didn't define her sense of love. But deep down, I knew she appreciated the thought behind it all. With our 20th anniversary drawing near, I was determined to make it unforgettable. I remembered how she'd always wanted to take a riverboat cruise, and instantly an idea took shape. It was going to take a fair amount of money and effort, but I was more than ready. I threw myself into work, staying late into the evening, putting in the hours to make the surprise a reality. Hannah, on the other hand, was less than thrilled by my sudden workaholic tendencies. She couldn't quite understand my obsession with this project, but the thought of her face lighting up when she saw the surprise made every late night worthwhile. "Dylan," she said, her voice a mix of frustration and concern, "you don't need to keep pushing yourself like this. There's no point in wallowing in guilt. Is it worth losing time with your family? I spend so many nights by myself while you're stuck at the office, and W is out with his friends." Our son W, now in college and training to be a lifeguard, was a good kid, but there hadn't been much of a father-son bond between us. He'd always thought I wasn't doing enough to provide, but these days, I was proud of him. Sure, we didn't always see eye to eye, but I didn't take his criticisms to heart. I figured that one day he'd understand the weight of supporting a family. For our anniversary, I'd given Hannah the cruise she dreamed of, along with a stunning bouquet. She was touched, but I couldn't hide the expense. "I really appreciate how much you've done to celebrate us, Dylan," she said, her voice soft. "You're doing all this to make me happy, and that means the world to me. But we can't forget about our financial obligations, the loan we're paying off and helping Wyatt get his driver's license. It doesn't feel right going on this trip without him." I thought about it for a second before replying, "But W's away at school and can't come. Maybe we should give the trip to the Williams family. They were at our wedding, and we've all been friends since college." It wasn't the ideal solution, but I knew she was right. There were bigger priorities, and even though the cruise was a dream I wanted to share with her, I couldn't forget the bigger picture. Our families had always mirrored each other in many ways. H and I tied the knot right after graduation, embarking on our journey together in a humble dormitory. Brian and I coincidentally started working at the same company, and even shared the same floor in the building. Over time, as life progressed, both families moved into separate apartments that were conveniently close, making it easy to visit and maintain our close-knit bond. However, the tides began to shift in the late 1990s, when Brian made a bold decision to leave his steady job and dive into the uncertain waters of starting his own business. At first, I questioned his choice. It seemed rash, even reckless. But to my surprise, he proved me wrong and built something remarkable. Years later, when he suggested we join a river cruise to escape the monotony of corporate life, it sounded like a brilliant idea. "Dylan, let's sail down the Mississippi," he had said. "I'll let my son run the business for a bit. He needs to learn the ropes." By late May, we found ourselves on a cruise ship, indulging in 3 lavish meals a day, scenic excursions, and endless entertainment. The days seemed to blur together, filled with laughter, courtesy of Brian's constant flow of alcohol and the charm of Aeon, a talented performer who kept the passengers captivated. Hannah, in particular, seemed especially taken by Aeon. She couldn't stop talking about his charisma and stage presence, and I'll admit his talent was undeniable. Things took a strange turn 2 days before the cruise ended. That evening, after a little too much wine, Hannah ended up completely drunk, a side of her I'd never seen before. Her slurred speech and antics felt deeply out of character, leaving me embarrassed and at a loss for words. Brian, visibly irritated, hissed, "Dylan, this is unacceptable." "Handle it." But before I could act, the evening spiraled further out of control. At one point, Hannah disappeared and panic set in. The thought of her stumbling off the deck or causing a scene sent me searching frantically. When I finally found her, the scene was shocking but utterly surreal. Aeon was in a nearby stateroom, not with Hannah in an intimate moment, but standing awkwardly beside her. She was slumped, disheveled, and sick. She had too much to drink, Aeon explained, his usual charm replaced by a grim expression. I made her drink mineral water, but it didn't help. I had to bring her here to recover before things got worse. He left shortly after, returning to his duties, leaving me alone with my wife and an overwhelming sense of humiliation. What were you thinking? I demanded, my frustration spilling out. You've embarrassed me in front of everyone, including Brian. Her response, however, cut me deeper than I could have imagined. And I've been ashamed of you my entire life, she shot back, her words slurring yet hitting with precision. You've never been able to provide, to satisfy me, to be the man I needed, and anyway, Wyatt is Brian's son. Her words hit me like a thunderclap, and suddenly memories I'd brushed off over the years rushed back with brutal clarity. The empty champagne bottles, the two glasses, the unfamiliar flowers on the table, the faint but distinct scent of cologne that wasn't mine. It all clicked. Her explanations had always been convincing, but now they seemed like rehearsed excuses. Even Brian had let something slip once, though I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I stopped by yesterday, but you weren't home, he said casually. Hannah was in a great mood. She got me drunk, fed me, and put me to bed. Standing there, my life unraveled in front of me. Every suspicion, every strange occurrence suddenly made perfect sense. The resemblance between Wyatt and Brian, once a fleeting thought, now felt undeniable. When Hannah returned home after the cruise, she claimed she couldn't remember the evening's events. I confronted her, my voice heavy with years of unspoken doubts. Her confession was blunt and unapologetic. Brian never planned to leave Victoria, she said matter-of-factly. He wasn't thrilled about Wyatt being his, but he helped when he could. A month and a half later, I left the apartment and moved in with my mother. Life has a way of delivering its own brand of justice. Hannah's world fell apart when Wyatt got involved in drugs and ended up serving a long prison sentence. She couldn't handle the heartbreak, and it wasn't long before it consumed her completely. At her funeral, only Brian and I stood by her grave. The irony was bitter, but I couldn't resist one final remark. Thank you, brother, I said, my voice heavy with sarcasm and pain, for all the happiness you brought into my life. Cheating Secrets podcasts like me